Okay, it's 4:05, so I just want to say we're going to get started, and we're going to be here for a while. So again, relax, and I think who's going to talk first?
I'm going to kick things off here.
So go ahead.
So my name is Lisa K. Hummel. I'm part of the project team that's helping to put on this webinar today. A few things I've already mentioned, and I think we haven't had any joiners since, but the view settings option and getting acquainted with Zoom is always the first thing I like to orient folks to. Your view settings option at the top of your screen is a good place to get started. Once you have done that, you'll see on your toolbar on the bottom in the center, you'll see a button for your chat box. You'll want to go ahead and pull up your chat box now. Again, you may not have to move that around to a place to where you can see the presentation. And as I go through a few other items on the screen, if you have your chat box available, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, if you could give us your name as well as your address, that'll be our record of the attendees of the webinar tonight. Also wanted to mention that we are going to record the presentation. So the chat box will be recorded and all of the video, of course, will be. So we are recording today's presentation. The information will also be available on the City of Grandview's website, and there is a link available there. And then the public comment period will be open until June 5th. Any comments received by June 5th will make their way into part of the meeting transcript. And we have the mailing address for comments if you'd like to submit them that way, as well as Dennis Randolph, project manager's email address. But throughout the presentation, so what's going to happen tonight is Scott's going to give us a little bit of a project overview. And then if you have any questions throughout the presentation, if you want to add them to the chat box, we will address them in the order that they were received. And so we will answer the questions this evening, hopefully in the workshop. We plan to do 2 presentations. We're kicking this one off here at 4 o'clock. We'll have about 30 minutes for questions and answers. We can, of course, extend that if we need extra time. And then we plan to have another presentation begin at 5:30. So don't worry, you shouldn't be on here all the way through 6:30 unless you would like to be, and we'd be thrilled if you wanted to join. So I believe with that, I'll pass it over to Scott Cogan, the project manager here for us on the consultant side.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, Scott Cogan with WSP, and we are helping the city on the PMC side, the owner's rep side of this design build project. What we have shown here is just a real quick meeting agenda. Actually, Dennis is going to go through a broad project overview. I will cover the schedule and a look at the preliminary design for the project. Then we'll talk about next steps, and then we'll open it up to any questions that have been asked in the chat box, as Lisa was saying, and we will answer those questions in the order they were received. So with that, I will kick it over to Dennis for a project overview. And there you go.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Yep.
And first, I want to welcome everybody to our meeting. And I see we've got 30 attendees already, so welcome. We really appreciate that. I think that's more than we've had at any of other in-person hearings, at least over the 10 years I've been here. And I think over most of my career, you know, I've been around a long time, and it's great when we got so many folks. So maybe this technology will really be a benefit for us to talk to a lot of people, and for also our residents or interested parties to come and join us. And so we're working out the kinks, and but I think it's worthwhile. And again, our objective is to give you information and try to get to your questions. If we can't answer your question online tonight, or if it's something that is more specific to your situation, you let us know. We will contact you later and get that answer. If we find that it's a piece of general information that everybody would benefit from hearing, then we're going to post those on our webpage too. So everybody will get the benefit, but we don't want to, if you've got a matter that affects your particular problem that you don't want spoken about in the public, we'll deal with you offline. Just indicate that in the chat box, and we'll take care of it that way. So I think we're very flexible. We just want to get the information out. Folks have been waiting a long time until we get to this point, and the year has been strange, and getting here has been a bit of a task, but we're here. And that goes back to 1980 when this project started, and the frontage roads along US 71 were converted to one-way traffic. And I think it's been a challenge for the city. The one-way roadways just really did cause some problems for getting around the city and for our businesses who found that customers had a hard time going in circles around and around. And I wasn't here, but I see it just on the list. Our previous city engineer, Larry Finley, was here, and I know Larry remembers that. And our Mayor Jones, is also here, and I had to mention his name so he'd know I saw it. But I know Mayor Jones has seen what those one-way frontage roads did. So for many years, they basically caused some real economic problems for the city. Fortunately, and it's been a good part of the 10 years I've been here, we've been working. And about 7 years ago, the highway department and the city came to an agreement where the city could convert the frontage roads back to two-way operation on both sides. We had to find the money to do it, so that's taken quite a bit of work. In the end, we had to come up with about $12 million of funds outside of the city's coffers, and the city is contributing about $3 million. So this is a $15 million project that we're working on. Again, most of the last 7 years have involved getting the funds through several different grant sources, surface transportation grants, and the highway department has worked with us to do some cost share programs. So we have the funding in place for this project. Again, it involves a big chunk of federal aid, which we appreciate, but along with the federal aid comes the requirement that we have to follow some specific rules. And this meeting is part of those rules. And what this part involves is that before we can get authorization to go ahead and proceed with the final design and construction, or buying right-of-way if we're using federal funds on some of that right-of-way, that we need to have a public meeting with folks just to let them know what the process is. And you'll hear about that tonight. You'll see Tim Orrick, who's kind of taking care of our right-of-way considerations. You'll hear from Tim in a little bit. But that's what this meeting is for. We're hoping that after the meeting is done and we get questions answered and all the documentation together, Missouri Department of Transportation will give us authorization to proceed with purchasing right-of-way on the southern portion of the project from 135th Street to the south. And the project runs from Harry Truman Drive on the north end to just north of M150 or MO150 on the south side. We already were able to get permission, which is called an A date, from the Department of Transportation earlier, and that's why we've been working for the last year or so on property acquisition on the north end. And a lot of you may have talked with or heard from Tim if you own property up there, or just in some preliminary work. And again, what we're going to get hopefully sometime in June is an A date for the south end. And then you will be hearing more from Tim as he and his appraisers go out. We have to follow specific rules. And again, you'll hear about that in a minute. What we're hoping right now is that, let me go back to one step. The other, I think, special part of this project besides correcting that economic development problem for the city, is that we're going to use a process called design build, which is a project delivery method to actually get this project done. And what that really means is, instead of having a separate design done by a engineering design firm and then bidding the project to a construction firm, we're going to select, based on qualifications, a design build team. And that team will consist of a partnership between design engineers and a builder, construction company, and a lot of the folks that they use to help them get a job done. They may have some technical firms working for them, and surveyors, and a team that will do the project for us. Again, we use a selection process that we've actually started. We've already let people know, or went through a qualification stage, and we have 3 firms right now that will be asked to provide proposals to us to do the job. In other words, to finish the design and to also build it for us. We've done some design, and that's what Scott has been helping us do. And also on the northern section, the highway department had done some earlier design regarding the project, but we took over that work several years ago, and WSP is our engineer consultant that helps us not only put together some basic geometry that we want the road to have, but also they prepare the proposal, or the RFP, the request for proposals, and the RFI, the request for information. They're putting together the scope with us that we will give to the design build team. So we have plans that you'll see that are about 30% done, but all the rest of the design will be done by the design build team once they get selected. And we're hoping that selection will happen a little later in the summer, I hope, early fall, and then we'll be able to let them go. Again, why the two-way traffic? It'll allow folks who live in Grandview to circulate a lot better, not to have to go out of their way to get from one side of our city to the other. I think, what else did I have? What's that north-south one there, Scott? I forgot.
I think you kind of covered it, Dennis. We just wanted to let people know kind of the difference between the north half of the project and the south.
Yeah.
The north half is a little bit further ahead when it comes to right-of-way and easement acquisition. And as you mentioned, MoDOT did the preliminary design for the north half, and WSP is doing the design for the south half. So I think with that, I was going to kind of walk through the schedule here a little bit.
Go ahead. That'll be fine.
So just to give everyone a big picture idea of where we are in the total lifespan of this project, you'll see here kind of a bar chart schedule with some color-coded items here. The blue over to the left, as Dennis mentioned, early on in this project, in previous years to 2019, I think this project dates back to 2015 or so when things actually got kicked off. But MoDOT completed the environmental process for the project. There's a categorical exclusion. They completed an access justification report, which just means, anytime you move a ramp on a interstate highway, you have to do that study to prove that it can work from an operational and safety standpoint. And as we mentioned, they also provided the design for the north half of the project. Rolling into last year, 2019, with that preliminary design for the north half done, MoDOT issued the A date that Dennis talked about, which let the right-of-way and easement acquisition process begin for the north half of the project. So that is ongoing, and hope to be wrapped up with that by the time we select a design builder, there's a chance we won't have every one of them acquired, but that will be the goal, is to have at least the north half acquired. Middle of last year, about the middle of last year, is when the city hired us to be their owner's rep for this project. That really entails a couple things. It's completing the preliminary design for the south half of the project, and also putting together what we call the procurement documents, or I guess the contract for the design build teams. So if you can see on the chart there, the red line is where we are today. So we're a little bit in the middle of some steps here. The south preliminary design we're wrapping up. The procurement documents, we're wrapping those up also. The next steps there will be, we can then start the right-of-way and easement acquisition for the south half of the project. This also allows us to begin the design builder selection process, where the 3 shortlisted teams will provide proposals, and the city will select the best value proposal to the contractor, and then that will begin the design build process, which is there in orange, where one of the benefits of design build is the ability to overlap the design with construction. So they can start finishing the design and even start constructing parts of the project before all of the design is completely finished. We're expected the construction to start early 2021 and finish up by summer of 2022. So that's the schedule. We wanted to talk about what is preliminary design. Dennis, you mentioned this earlier, but we've done what we're calling about 30% complete on the design. Basically, we've done just enough to design to establish the right-of-way footprint for the project, to figure out where are the areas where we need to acquire additional right-of-way, where we need to go out and get temporary construction easements. The other thing that we've done is we've started coordinating with utilities. Part of our preliminary design effort is to look at where we have major utilities and try to avoid those as much as possible. We want to try to limit the amount of relocations, because that could have an impact on the overall project schedule. So that is what we've done with preliminary design. I will say it's inevitable the design build teams will make changes. So what we're going to walk through today may not be what gets built. It'll be close, and there will be certain things that will be required. But the other good thing about design build is that with the engineer and contractor working together, they can look for efficiencies and innovations to further improve the design from the 30% to the final design stage. So look for that. Also look for potential enhancements. Part of the selection will include some enhancements, looking for some things like landscaping. There's going to be several tracts of land that the city owns that will free up to be potential little park land type areas, lighting, those sorts of things is what we're considering enhancements.
As well as some, I think we mentioned sidewalks, but the sidewalks and trails really are something important for the city. We're very walkable. We want to be more walkable.
Yep. So with that, I'm going to bring up a map of the project. Panelists, let me know if you're seeing the map.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and get started. Okay.
You're all
So
set.
this is a map of the overall project. As Dennis mentioned earlier, the project limits are from Mo 150 on the south end up to Harry S. Truman Drive on the north end. So looking at this map, north is to the right. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to start at the south end and work our way up the east side and then back down the west side. First thing I want to do is look at the legend for the project, just to let everyone know what all the colors mean on this map. So we have a darker bluish purple color. That's where we have a new sidewalk. There's going to be a couple areas that are in this reddish color that we're calling optional sidewalk. Those are going to be areas where we have found it difficult to get a sidewalk in those locations without extensive grading and culvert extensions, those types of things. So we're calling those optional sidewalk areas. The green is going to be mill and overlay. So that's where they just come in and scrape off the top couple inches of asphalt, put down a new layer. And then the lighter blue color is anywhere we have new pavement. So anywhere we have the roadway kind of following a new alignment, that's where you would see the new pavement. The cross-hatched area is where we have pavement removal. Black are existing property lines. Orange is the existing right-of-way line. So on the front edge of the properties as they abut the right now it's MoDOT owned, but that'll change over to city owned after this project. The proposed right-of-way is the red color. Temporary easements are a dashed blue, and there are a couple places where we've indicated privacy fence on the project, and I'll point those out as we go. So with that, I'm going to start on the south end here on the east side. This is the Mo 150 interchange. This is a fairly recent here. Today at this intersection this is White Avenue here on the east side. This is where the frontage roads currently go from two-way to one-way. So there will be some restriping, putting down some new pavement markings, getting rid of the medians in this area to allow for that two-way operation on the frontage roads. And then we go into a mill and overlay section for quite a ways here. You'll also notice the sidewalk. This is one of those areas where we put this as optional sidewalk. This is a large tract with several large culverts. It's steep. It drops off pretty sharply. But you know, we don't want to. We want to get as much as we can out of this project. So we're showing it. We're acquiring the temporary easements in order to build it, and hopefully the design build teams can stretch the project budget and get that sidewalk put in. Here you'll notice as we approach, this is, I want to point out 140th Street, those ramps to and from 140th Street are all coming out, and the movements to get to 140th Street are shifting to roundabouts on either side of I-49. So on the east side, the roundabout actually sits south of 140th Street, and on the west side, the roundabout sits north of 140th Street. So what you're seeing here is adding a new auxiliary lane between the Mo 150 interchange and this new roundabout on the east side to handle that traffic to and from 140th Street. This is one of those areas where we've identified that privacy screening along the properties. These are all residential properties that are getting a brand new roundabout and infrastructure put in their backyards essentially, and so we want to provide some screening there for those property owners. Again, a new roundabout that will serve the northbound traffic on I-49 to and from 140th Street. Some of you may know, if you're residents in Grandview, that 140th Street Bridge is currently under construction. This project is not tied to that one. However, there will be some coordination between the projects. One thing I'll point out here is on the auxiliary lane underneath the bridge, you'll notice a gap of pavement missing here. That is actually being included in that project, so that we don't have to come back and build that with our project and tear up the work that they're doing there. So moving north, 140th Street will get all new striping. The signals, the traffic signals at these intersections will have to be reworked to allow for that two-way traffic.
And Scott, I want to jump in 1 second and just say,
Yeah.
I know some folks in town have wondered about the bridge and why it isn't part of a project, or is it part of the project? And it isn't. And we talked a lot with MoDOT about being able to maybe keep the jobs tighter, but it wasn't possible, just from different funding and timing requirements that our agencies have, the city and MoDOT. So we did try. We weren't able to do it, but in the end, we're going to end up with the same type of facilities as if we had. And so, but I just wanted folks to know that it wasn't something we forgot about or didn't talk about. We were just not able to work out a lot of the details. Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to move up the east side here. We get back to the green, which again is just mill and overlay. We are having to replace some of the driveways along here because we're putting in new sidewalk all along here. So that continues for quite a ways here. 135th Street is the demarcation of the difference between the south and the north project. This is how far south MoDOT took the design, and this is where our design for the south part matches in with that. As we approach Main Street here, you'll notice that the existing ramps to and from Main Street are getting removed, and those are being shifted to be closer to Main Street. And then on the outer road here, this curve is being reworked to allow a smoother transition from the outer road to High Grove. At that point, the outer road traffic would come down High Grove Road, and we're putting in a new road between High Grove and essentially 129th Street to the north to serve as the outer road traffic from north to south at Main Street. This will require a new signal at this intersection and a new place for pedestrians to cross Main Street at that location. We have another area here to point out. With this being a new road along the backside of these properties that don't currently have a road in their backyard, we are going to put some privacy screening along these properties as well. This proposed road will tie into the existing Booth Lane here, which will mean that the existing Booth Lane to the south will end up being a cul-de-sac at that point. We match into the existing Booth Lane and then follow down 129th Street, at which point again, we have a curve in there to allow for a smoother transition to the outer roads. Go back into a mill and overlay section with additional sidewalks all the way up to Harry S. Truman Drive. At that point, the outer roads do go back to the one-way operation north of Harry S. Truman Drive. And I don't know, Dennis, you may have some more history on that, but I think basically that's where we ran out of money. And I don't know that there was a plan to move to do this, at least with this project at this time.
And I think one of the things we had planned for is that there be some other facility that could carry two-way traffic from Harry Truman Drive up to Blue Ridge. And if you go through Truman Marketplace, you'll see that new 15th Street, the street with the black poles and the banners on it, is someday going to be connected down to Harry Truman Drive, and that would be the path that the two-way roads would follow up to Blue Ridge. And in the future, possibly the same thing would happen on the east side of the road, depending on what kind of development went into that area. So what we wanted to do, especially in the commercial areas, is keep the traffic in closer to commercial areas. That's generally what folks like for visibility and just to help people get in and out. So that's what you'll see right now. We also hope that maybe someday in the future we could eliminate some laneage, especially on the west side of those west frontage roads, because there's a lot of lanes there. And, you know, for sustainability and resilience, you try to eliminate some of that, or maybe run a trail down there. As you all know, there's no sidewalk along the frontage road there. So, but that's for the future. Again, we got about all the money we're going to get right now for the project, and that'll be for another stage. But I think we have ideas about it, and there's still time to contribute other ideas for the future.
Yep. Okay, so then turning around at Harry S. Truman and going back down on the west side, again, we have an area where the existing ramp is getting removed, and that ramp is being shifted up closer to Main Street. We have the frontage road transitioning to tie into Good Avenue here. Again, a little bit of full depth needed for that curve there. And then at Good Avenue, and this is 15th Street, traffic would make its way back over and across Main Street. There will be some new pavement needed in that area to add some lanes. There's an existing signal there that will need to get updated. And then go into a little bit of a mill and overlay down 15th and then back down High Grove, where the frontage road then connects back into, or the High Grove connects into the frontage road at that point. Another curve needed there.
I've been, if I can, right here. Yep. And you see this new road isn't necessarily a path that you can go fast on. That's not our purpose. We're going to have our speed limits out along the frontage roads, and our idea is to keep them complete streets and streets that are comfortable for walkers and bikers and everybody to use. So again, our intent in our two-way transportation isn't for folks to go fast. If you want to go fast, go on the expressway, but to service the community, both our residences and our businesses, and keep speeds reasonable and safe. Thank you, Scott.
Mm-hmm. So then again, we get back to a mill and overlay section south of High Grove here. This is an area with some pretty densely populated commercial properties. So we will be in this area, there'll be some curb and buried drainage through here to clean up some of this access along there. And then we get to the west side roundabout that serves traffic going to and from 140th Street. The added benefit of this roundabout is that there's a connection over to 15th Street, and I believe this is prime development area for the city, so this is going to be a good investment for the city here. At that point, we have the new ramp that carries traffic from the frontage road to southbound I-49. This is the existing southbound off-ramp coming out for 140th Street that will now use this ramp back here and go through the roundabout to make that movement. We get back to 140th Street, where again, mostly mill and overlay and restriping the pavement marking and updating the signals at that location. The southbound on-ramp again comes out because now traffic is going to backtrack a little bit, come back to the roundabout on the two-way frontage road and loop around to get on I-49. And then from that point on, it's pretty much just going to be a mill and overlay with an adjacent sidewalk all the way down to the 150 intersection. So from a sidewalk standpoint, we talked about a couple areas that we had the optional. That was on the east side. The goal for the city is to have a continuous path from Bo 150 all the way up to Harry S. Truman with this project. So we will be requiring the sidewalk to be placed on the west side for the entire length of the project to make that connection. So that is the preliminary design. I'm going to hop back to the presentation here. So next steps with the project. We've mentioned that public comments will be taken through June 5th. The right-of-way acquisition process for the south half of the project will begin shortly, and that will be explained in a little more detail on the next slide. We've mentioned this before, but design build team selection, looking at late summer, fall for that. Construction to begin in early next year and end by summer of 2021. And so with that, I will turn it over to Tim Orrick, who is the city's attorney doing the appraisals for the property on the project.
Well, thank you, Scott. This is a unusual way to do a public meeting like this, but it might be the future, and I hope we're able to communicate a general outline of the right-of-way acquisition process, keeping in mind that if you do own property that will actually be directly impacted by an easement, that there will be much communication to come in the months ahead. So generally the right-of-way acquisition process, obvious as you expand roads, enhance roads, oftentimes the existing right-of-way footprint is not sufficient for the new project, and therefore additional easements are needed in order to establish a new footprint that is going to accommodate the project design. Nobody loves it when we knock on their door or send them a letter for the first time telling them their property is going to be impacted and here's how it's going to happen. But it's obviously, I guess, a necessary part of the process. The important thing that I would want to emphasize is that over the years, particularly when federal money is attached to a project, there are a fairly rigid set of laws and regulations that local governments that are out acquiring property for a public improvement project have to follow as a condition of meeting or accepting federal funding. And so those process generally is that, again, a formal set of written communications between the city. In this case, I will be acting on their behalf, but you would hear from my office. We're required, in order to make an offer, to first of all have an appraisal performed by an independent real estate appraiser. And that person's job is to determine what amount of money is owed to the property owner in order to satisfy the just compensation requirement. Most of the time, depending on how impactful the easements are, there will be a second real estate appraiser that has to sort of review and sign off on the first. After that appraisal process is completed, then the city would make a formal written purchase proposal to the property owner. for the easements that are needed for the project. When that happens, you'd be provided copies of the appraisal, so we try to put all our cards on the table so that the property owner feels like nothing's being hidden from them. After the written offer is made, we are obligated by law to engage in good faith negotiations. And, you know, that's really, again, an opportunity for the property owner to provide us information that they feel may have been overlooked or not considered appropriately, but some give and take on things that the property owner may know about that the appraiser may or may not have picked up. So anyway, there is some back and forth. Inevitably, you know, it's on a project like this, there are somewhere around 60 to 65 property owners that we anticipate at this point will be directly impacted. But sometimes for a number of reasons, the property owner and the city may not be able to come to an agreement for the voluntary negotiation of acquiring those easements. And at that point, the compensation is ultimately determined by the condemnation or eminent domain process. That's obviously something that the city very much hopes to avoid. And, you know, it's my job generally to make sure all the rules are complied with so that the city is acquiring the right of way in a manner that meets all the requirements that are attached to accepting federal money. So that is a general overview of that process. Again, anybody that's directly impacted will certainly be in direct written communication with you as this process moves forward.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I think at this point, yeah, we're to questions. So, Lisa, I think you've been keeping track of questions, and we can just go through the ones we've received, and we'll answer them as they come.
Okay. So the first question that we received, and I believe you touched on it, but we'd like to know what is happening at 140th Street, and is that part of this project?
We did touch on that. So yeah, 140th Street, that bridge is being replaced. There's not much else outside the footprint of the bridge that is being replaced. There's some shoulder work being done down on I-49 to shift traffic back and forth to maintain traffic on I-49. But this project would come up to those intersections on either side and kind of fit in with the improvements that are being done there on that bridge project. I will mention that the bridge currently is 5 lanes, and the new bridge is going to be 4 lanes. A traffic analysis was done that showed that it did not need to be 5 lanes. It has to do with how we're shifting traffic away from that intersection to the roundabouts on either side. So there will be some reconfiguration of the lanes as you go across that bridge.
And that's the main difference. You'll still see 4 lanes to be able to maneuver. We're going to change the way the signal is timed. And the big benefit, I think, is though that we'll have real sidewalks on that bridge as opposed to kind of a shoulderish area out there now. So I don't think most people will see a lot of difference in how everything works out there. Hopefully it'll actually be a little cleaner when we get less room for jockeying around and doing things like that.
Okay. The second question we received is, how have the 3 design builder finalists been selected? similarly. You might have touched on that later, but can you clarify?
Why don't you go ahead, Scott? Yes, we have selected the 3 firms that are going to get proposals, but I always forget their names. So sorry for you. I see them on the chat list, and I don't want to screw your names up. Why don't you tell everybody who they are, Scott?
Okay, we have Emery Sapp and Sons is the contractor. They are with Olson and Associates. We have Clarkson Construction. They are with Trans Systems. And then we have Rodmacher with Trek Design, the 3 design teams. And please send me a note to the panelists if I messed any of that up. I'm going off of memory there.
And you mentioned that the determination will be made later this summer, early fall.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So third question, is the outer road going to be only one way north of Harry Truman Drive?
Yes, it will remain one way. Again, I outlined kind of pulling the bulk of the traffic away from the frontage road itself, and hopefully we'll do something differently up on that part of the corridor in the future.
Next question, if oh, let's see, that's a little detail. So we had a comment that the maps were not clear to read as we were going through them, and they would like to see the maps in person. And I believe they are posted, if I'm not correct. Dennis, could you maybe share with
Yes.
how that can happen? Mm-hmm.
Yes, right now we've posted a copy of the map on the front of City Hall, and that was part of our agreement with the Highway Department to do this. So you can find them on City Hall if you want, and if you come to City Hall, you can let the attendants at the front door know that you're here, and one of my staff can come out, either I or our city engineer can come out, and we'd be glad to point things out or talk to you with them. Again, we're doing that for our safety of everybody involved regarding COVID. So we do have them there, and plus you will be able to get these PDFs right on our webpage. There it is right there, to be able to download and blow up to whatever's comfortable size you need. So yes, we have it. Again, if you come to City Hall, let us know. We still have limits on how many people can come in, but we will come out and talk with you. So just give us a call beforehand to set up a time, or come to City Hall and let the attendants at the front door know that you want to talk to Public Works.
There were a couple questions, Dennis, I noticed as I was scrolling through on where this could be found. If you go to grandview.org/I-49, it'll redirect you to this website that I have up here. So this is the correct website. You can view the project exhibit here, view the presentation here. And then it looks like we have the previous public meeting that was held back in 2017 on there also.
Yep, thanks for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. This does not include frontage road in front of Truman Corners.
Right.
Question mark.
That's that section from Harry Truman Drive north to Blue Ridge Boulevard. That's correct. It doesn't.
Next question. Has any other municipality done a project like this that diverts the frontage roads similar to phase 1, the box at Main Street? And if so, where? Did that make sense how I read that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I am personally not familiar with something like this being done. And just real quick explanation. The Federal Highway Administration and Missouri Department of Transportation are concerned necessarily with the on and off actions on I-49. So by boxing out the area, we're able to keep those on and off ramps, their operation clean. What we're doing is separating the on and off traffic from the local traffic. Again, this helps make the road more comfortable for folks, makes it a lower speed, uh, more city-like geometry on the streets and the corners and everything. And for the city, I think the long term, what it provides is an area for improved economic activity in the future, hopefully. It basically is providing more frontage along a road for commercial developments or office developments of services. One of the big complaints that I heard when I came to Grandview was that you couldn't even buy a tie. I think I heard that first from Alderman Crane, who's on the call. And what we can do is have places to put services in for the city, and that's what that boxing out does. So again, we have to separate the expressway traffic, and you all know, if you come up the frontage roads regularly like I do, it's a bit of a race sometimes on and off the ramps. And what this does, it will eliminate a lot of that jockeying around between local traffic and traffic who wants to get on the expressway.
Okay, next question. Are phase 1 and phase 2 being done simultaneously? And if not, that creates a lot of traffic on 15th Street between 135th and Main. They also provided a link. And there's a couple follow-up questions, I believe, with that, but I'll let you get started on the first one, perhaps.
I think, yes, the whole project is being done at one time. So the design builders will have the entire road project from Harry Truman Drive down to 150 Highway. We're having to divide it, we've had to divide it up to this point, again, because of the way the design was done, and because we transferred who was doing that design from the Missouri Department of Transportation to our own, to the city. But no, it'll be done as one piece.
And then why are the old ramps from before the 80s not usable?
I think the question is, or the reason that those ramps aren't being used is more a result of the access justification report that was done on this project. That looked at safety and operations. It looked at merging and weaving distances between the ramps out here. And so I think at that time, MoDOT and FHWA felt like pulling those ramps in closer to Main, more like a traditional diamond interchange, was better from a safety and operation standpoint. That is the locations of the ramps as shown is what was approved in the AJR. There is a process for the design build teams to modify that AJR if they come up with an idea that changes that. So that is an option.
Yes, and we had, I don't think anticipated is the right word, but there may be some great ideas that come from the design builders. That's why this process is so nice. And we've discussed with both the Federal Highway Administration and Missouri DOT about the need to redo that access justification report. If you're familiar with transportation work, especially associated with expressways, the AJR is an important document that sets the rules, and it's the justification Federal Highway needs to make sure that their expressways are safe. So again, we're interested. They're interested in weaving spaces, and again, that jockeying I was mentioning a few minutes ago, that isn't real good. And one of the major benefits of this project will be safety, in that we're going to eliminate a lot of that jockeying around, which is, if you look at the crash history, you see it at two places along this corridor, at the signalized intersections, mostly regarding turns, which this will help clean up, and then some side swipes and weaving related crashes. So again, the project will take care of not only car and truck vehicle safety problems, but I think very important for me, especially the sidewalks are going to make bicyclists and pedestrians safer. If nothing else, they'll have a facility to be on. And if you go up there right now, it's not a good situation when folks have to walk in the street if they want to walk along the frontage road. And often they have to walk against the traffic or with the traffic, not against it. And that's just because of the one way. So safety is a big part of this. Safety is important. And the fact that we've got much nicer access in the end for the business out along the expressway, I think they're two of the problems that folks have talked about. And I think that's what's important to us in the city to be able to do, make it safe, help businesses, get the services to our people, our folks in town, so that they can get to them safely and quickly too, not have to circle around forever to cross the expressway. We've managed to work with the highway department, and the 140th Street Bridge is the final bridge, but we have real sidewalks across our bridges. So again, when you do want to cross the expressway, you can do it a lot safer. And again, that's been the real heart of this, making it better for the folks who live in Grandview.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis. Next question is, will there be parking on the new 29th Street?
That's a good question. Have you thought about that? You got to unmute, Scott.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I assume we're talking about 129th Street, maybe on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The area to the north, on the north end.
Of 129th Street.
Yeah. Yeah, right there.
The plan there was not to modify what's out there today. I think the shape may be a little off because it doesn't look like it's quite overlaying the full width of the road. But the plan there is not to mess with the widths and what's out there today.
Yeah. So the proviso is this: as always, per every street in the city of Grandview, if there ends up being a problem regarding parking or safety because of that, we have processes. A Citizens Advisory Commission on Transportation looks at it. And ultimately, if something has to be done, it goes to the Board of Aldermen. And they make the final decision after input from citizens. So, but right at this point, we don't anticipate a change.
Okay. Next question, will construction take place on both outer roads simultaneously, or east side first, then west side?
Yeah, so this is another one of those areas where design build is a great delivery method. We are trying to leave it as flexible as possible so that design build teams can come in and look at innovative approaches to building the project and keeping things open. There will be certain things that can't, certain movements that can't be closed at the same time. Those sorts of things will be in the contract. But as far as the phasing goes, that'll be up to the design build teams to determine.
Yeah, and that's not as scary as you may think. Design build teams know one thing: the quicker they can get a job done, the better it is for them. And I'll use the P word, it's more profitable for them. It makes everybody happier. So their objective isn't to create times when roads are closed excessively. And so that we are looking at all the situations right now regarding traffic. Again, there's a balance between too much rules for a design build team and too little. But the design bid team proposal documents will make it clear that they can't dump a lot of traffic in one place for long periods of time. They have to keep access available for properties and Tim is working on this for us, especially he's had several really nice ideas regarding managing blocked streets and or driveways. Very good. I think they're very creative. And so again, we don't want more traffic on 15th Street or on Booth Drive. That will cause a problem than necessary. But there will be disruptions. There always is. This is a big job for Grandview, and sometimes traffic has to be slowed down. But we think a design build team can do a very much better job of managing that than government can, than I can. They're out there dealing with you all. They're very accessible. You'll find that you're going to be able to walk up to their folks. It doesn't mean they can do everything you want or would want to, but they're very accessible, and I think that's a benefit for everybody in town too.
Okay. So next question, will the city be responsible for the future maintenance of the roads, assuming that the state maintains them now?
We will be responsible for all those new areas that are two-way. In the areas serving the ramps directly, Missouri Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration will maintain jurisdiction. And again, because it's a ramp for on and off traffic to the interstate, they want to have control for that. But for the rest of the areas, yes, they will become ours, as well as the one-way sections of the frontage road north of Harry Truman Drive.
Okay, next question. So if I'm southbound on 49 and I want to exit at 140th Street, will I exit early at the roundabout?
Yes. So I'm kind of dragging the screen to the south. So that movement would occur at the roundabout ahead of 140th Street. You would exit, drive around and through the roundabout onto the frontage road and continue south to 140th Street.
Okay.
One thing, Lisa, before we leave that, I want to mention that I know roundabouts are still different for a lot of folks or for unusual things, but we worked with the highway department on the 155th Street roundabout, as well as Diverging Diamond. That's a neat design, but they work quite well. And I think what this just really says is that we've got a couple roundabouts in that area. If you can deal with 155th Street, I deal with it every day, so I think it works pretty cool. You should be able to handle this. It'll be designed to the most current standards and great visibility. And so, again, it'll be different, certainly, but I think it's going to work real well for us, and it really will be a nice enhancement for some future economic development down in that part of Grandview.
Okay, next question. Do we have any indication of the amount of traffic increase flowing through High Grove, New Road, and 129th on the east?
Dennis, on that one, I would say yes. Again, this is the area that MoDOT designed. They, as part of what they did for the access justification report, they did an overall model of the traffic for the entire project, which showed what the traffic was diverting down to High Grove and up to 129th Street. I don't know what those exact numbers are, but it was the proposed lane widths and configurations that are shown today were adequate for the traffic increase at that location.
And kind of for reference is this. Right now, you may say, well, look at all the traffic on the frontage road, but especially as we get up to the High Grove, between High Grove and 129th Street, a lot of the traffic that you see is either getting off the expressway or getting on the expressway. And that traffic won't be going down High Grove or 129th Street, just a portion of it, okay? So what that exactly will turn out to be, I'm not sure. Again, we've modeled it. we're putting in 2 lanes. That's more than adequate to handle it. So I think it's not going to be bumper to bumper traffic going through there by any means. It'll be the portion that we're going to just stay on the frontage road before. Sorry, if can't get any closer. If we can find something a little closer, we'll post it up on the web page for everybody to see.
Okay, so that is the majority of the questions we've received. So if you haven't heard yours yet, please do add it. I have one left in the queue, so now would be a good time if you have follow-up questions or you haven't heard a response yet. So the last question we have currently is, please explain the exit and entrance to Main Street northbound. Is the outer road north of Main Street to 129th still one way?
Yeah, read that one more time.
Sure.
I think I know it.
So it's asking for us to explain the exit and entrance to Main Street northbound.
Okay.
And the question is the outer road north of Main Street to 129th still one way?
Okay, that's a great question and something I did skip over. The northbound off-ramp is, per the AJR, getting shifted to be closer to Main Street. So that one originally was, the exit was further south, and that one's getting moved to the north. This ramp, the northbound on-ramp, the AJR had it coming on quickly like the rest of the ramps in this interchange. MoDOT's design had it staying on its current alignment, but not connecting in with the frontage road. We are currently working with MoDOT and FHWA to finalize what would be allowed at this location. And so that will be part of the procurement documents that the design build teams are given, is where we ended up on that. There's several different options we're looking at there.
Right. We're doing some brand new modeling. We just started it, or WSP just started it the last few days. And so those will be ongoing. Again, it's partly the nature of a design build job. You don't necessarily have all the detail answers worked out before you get going, but you try to set the scope of what you want to do well enough so that you can work out a very good design and leave opportunities for cost saving and just some creative engineering. So there will be more information about this later to help everybody, including a nice model that we will probably without a doubt post the video of the model up on the expressway probably in a month or so. I don't quote me on it. I'm quoted already, but keep in touch with us and we'll let you know when that model's available to look at.
Okay, well, team, that we haven't received any additional questions. We do still, of course, have time. I might ask if anyone joined after we mentioned this when we kicked things off. Oh, I just got a question. But if you haven't added your name and address to the chat box, that's our record of attendees. So please do that if you haven't yet. And here is another question. There probably shouldn't be parking on that road, it being an access road. Would have been the one you were just talking about.
On 129th Street.
Yeah.
And that may well be. Like I said, the city has a process for parking restrictions. We just went through one for another street in town. So that is something, again, I think we want to make sure everything's safe, but we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity for input. And this is one of those cases we can build a road that if everybody ends up, including the police and the advisory committee and the board, feel it would be best to restrict things, that's fine. I put up the signs. So again, it leaves flexibility, and it's not that we don't think it's right or wrong. It's just that it's something we can deal with a little further down in time and make sure that everybody's comfortable. The road will handle it either way. So there isn't a loss or anything like that. I hope that helps a little bit. Yeah.
And one more question we've received here. It appears that there's no convenient on and off to I-49 south of 140th Street. With that being said, is the case, I will find another on and off route. 150 highway westbound to southbound I-49 is a horribly slow connection route. So
and
I
actually,
can repeat if you need.
Actually, and Scott could jump in, but if you get off at the big roundabout and go south on the West Frontage Road and then cross 140th Street and turn right, you're right there. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's how we had planned for you to be able to get there. Yeah, not to go down the 150. I understand your comment exactly, but our plan for getting to the East Frontage Road south of 140th is to get off at the big roundabout and just go that way.
Exactly. So in the northbound direction, you would exit here, go through the roundabout, and then up to 140th Street, and then from 140th Street to I-49 northbound, just be a little bit of a backtrack down the frontage road, through the roundabout, and back around to I-49 northbound.
Yeah. So you should be able to do it. That's why the improved 140th Street Bridge is important, because there is going to be a reorientation of the traffic. Again, it's different, but our intent is to make sure we've got access to all the properties without going through intersections like 150th and I-49. And we're also, I might just add one thing just for information for everybody. One of the problems we have in the area of I-49 and 150 is that, or 150 highway, is that when the loss of a lane south down in Belton, south of 155th Street, causes backups often all the way up to almost Main Street, but certainly up into the 140th Street. And we are working along with Raymore and Belton to try to get improvements down there. And so there won't be that kind of backups that contribute to 100 or that interchange at 150 highway and I-49 to operate poorly. So there are a lot of pieces. We don't get them all overnight, but this is our important thing, our start, but we certainly are supporting our neighbors to the south because their traffic affects us a lot. So again, this is hopefully just the start of a lot of good things that'll happen with transportation. It'll be different. It certainly doesn't happen overnight, but if Congress and the federal government get us some infrastructure money, especially as part of any COVID relief, this might happen sooner rather than later. So again, we do continually go after funding and opportunities to try to make this whole I-49 system work better for everybody down on the south part of Kansas City metro area.
Okay, we have one comment here. 140th to 49th South is a nightmare.
I think I just answered that, at least what we're doing, and we
Okay.
supporting Belton and Raymore and us to be able to help with that. So again, if you see a Congress starting some work on them, they always, our congressmen and women love to hear from the citizens when they're looking at a bill, and it does make a matter, or it is important. So when you watch what's happening, if you hear the word infrastructure, I-49 South and the fix that will help us in Grandview a lot, may be one of those projects that comes up or that we can grab some money for, or for MoDOT to have to do the widening. So again, we are working on that, and we're also working with our neighbors on a couple other things regarding transit. So I think on the south end of Kansas City now you're seeing a nice coalition of communities that are trying to deal with transportation problems differently than they have been in the past. And so again, I just see good things happening over the years for everybody.
Okay. So a couple more questions kind of rolling in. We have a request to get on I-49 North from 140th Street. If we could please go over that once again.
Sure. So if you're on 140th Street and you're coming from the west, to go north onto I-49, you would take a right onto the now two-way frontage road. You would come down, circle around at the roundabout, not go through the roundabout, but just basically make a U-turn there, and then you'd be on your way to I-49 North.
Yeah.
From the east, now instead of having the right turn quick slip ramp there, you would at the signal you would make a left and make the same movement, go down the frontage road and circle around to the north.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention again, because we've taken a really heavy turn, the left turn off of eastbound 140th Street. That's why we can do things and have less turning lanes. Okay. And that's why we were able to do that. So we have coordinated with MoDOT about that. I also want to mention about that slip ramp that's on the north side of 140. If you know, it's quite a grade down to the expressway, and there's always a conflict between people coming up the frontage road and people turning right on 140th Street about who gets the right of way. And I know that I see it every morning. So this really makes drivers more effortless in terms of who gets to go first and who's going down where. And that's been one of our objectives. And so it also gives a longer merge down onto the expressway, which is an objective of the Federal Highway Administration and MoDOT. The more time you have to run along the expressway in that auxiliary lane, the better chance you have opportunity to merge into traffic safely. Again, a lot of safety aspects on this job that will make the whole system nicer to drive on.
Okay, so we have a few comments that I could read if as well, but we do have a request, Dennis, for contact at City Hall to discuss further. Would it be okay to go ahead and include your
Yes, absolutely.
phone number and email in the chat box?
And again, feel free to contact me. And I don't always pick up because of stuff going on, but we get back with everybody as quickly, within a day, not the same day. And either I can talk with you, I'll be glad to talk with you, or if I'm not for some reason available, our new city engineer, Doug Weschel-Smith, he'll talk with you and we'll get you some answers. So yes, call my number, 816-316-4855.
I'll type it here as well for everyone. So I guess some comments. The 150th Street access is impossible to navigate and will be worse when we quadruple the amount of traffic trying to get on at I-49 South, since we will no longer have access from 140th.
I guess the second part of that, there will be access from 140th. It just won't be at the location it is today. You would need to, if you're coming from the west, you would make a left onto the frontage road, go up to the roundabout, and make that U-turn to get onto I-49 South.
And there's another alternative too, Scott. If you go back to the west a little bit and run up 15th Street, if you're coming west on 140th, you'll be able to turn left and go to, it's the next street up. Yeah, right
here. Yeah.
Come in on the new road right into the roundabout.
Yep. Bypass.
Yeah, it'll be
bypass the signal. Yep.
Yep. You don't have to mess with the signal, and you could head south, and probably in the end, it'll be a quicker trip for you. Yeah.
Okay, 140th Street east of I-49 has been a major connection to buyers. With this change, the path will be slowed down.
Um, Again, I'm not sure that that is the case, because you'll be able to certainly continue across will be the same as it has been, and the ramps allow you to both ramps allow you to get onto 140th. I certainly would be glad to talk with any about that and to hear what they have to say if we need to make some adjustments. But I don't. I guess would be something we can talk about. We'd be glad to talk with you.
Okay, and then if just so everyone is aware, we did include Dennis's contact info, the email and phone number in the chat box, and Doug also provided his phone number.
Yep. Yep.
So 2 more comments. Nice flow on phase 2. Phase 1, not so sure. And 58 highway needs a dedicated lane.
58 highway. 58 is down in Belton. I'm not sure if that's what they mean. Again, we're working with the city of Belton and Raymore regarding improvements of I-49 down, down to and including the 58 highway interchange. But that's again, that's that bigger long-term picture. If it's another street you mean, just let us know and we can talk about that.
Okay, one more question came in here. How well with the roundabout, or how well will the roundabouts rather be able to handle the large trucks that head west of I-49 and or campers and boats?
The roundabouts have been designed and laid out to handle, I believe, I don't know the exact designation, but it's a large semi truck that was modeled going through these roundabouts, so they will have the ability to use them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think again they have the mountable kind of inside shoulder that trucks can roll on. I watched one do it this morning on a roundabout, and it worked fine. So we are using some very modern techniques regarding this particular set of geometrics, for lack of a better term, doing out there. So again, we'd be glad to show you that, or Scott can show you how the trucks lay out on the roundabout. If you let us know, send us an email, and we can show you how the trucks actually work on the roundabouts.
And so again, that is all the questions that we have received currently. So I'll apologize in advance if we somehow missed one. Please do submit it for us and we'll address it. We also had planned to start a presentation again at 5:30. So if you came on a little bit late and you'd like to see the start of the presentation or just a recap of what we've discussed, please stay with us. Go for it, Dennis.
Yeah, I want to again thank everybody. I see 22 people put up with our droning on, or my droning on anyway. Scott's a lot better than me. But you have to remember, I usually discuss these things with my students and I give them tests, so they have to listen to me. You don't get that benefit from me right now. So anyway, we really do appreciate you coming. I think we've had more attendees than I had anticipated. That's great. It shows everybody really cares about what's going on, which is even better. So it also timed out real well. We thought we were going to have a lot of a black space to fill in, and I'm going to run out for a second while we could go, and we'll probably get going about 5 or 6 minutes again. So if you want to stick around and hear us say it again, that's fine, or put some more questions in. And again, we really do appreciate you coming, and hopefully we'll be talking to you property owners who are out there real soon. Tim is chafing at the bit here to get going, and we want to get this project going. I know our design build friends who are out there listening with us today also want us to get going. So It's been a long time coming, but we're finally doing it. And I think that that's what it will really help the city in the future and right away too. So again, thanks for coming, and we'll start again in a few minutes. And I guess Scott will be here to talk. I'm going to step away for a minute, and then, but if you've got hard questions, you can ask Scott while I'm away.
Well, it's 5:35. Should we get started on the next presentation? Dennis may still be away, but we can get started.
Yep, I think so. I'm ready.
Okay.
For anyone who may have just joined us, I just like to orient folks to the view option settings at the top of your screen. You should see a little green box, and to the right of that, there's a drop down. If you exit full screen and you do side-by-side mode, I feel that that's a good way to view the presentation. And then the next thing that you'll want to pull up is your chat box. So now on the bottom of your screen in your toolbar, on the lower part, there should be a chat box. There's also a Q&A. You can submit your questions that way, but if you do the chat box, you'll send those right to the panelists, and we will answer the questions in order that they're received. If we have anyone who has just joined us and they haven't introduced themselves or included their name and address in the chat box, that's going to be our record of attendees today. And so with that, I think there is a website where the presentation materials are posted. I'll put that in the chat box again, so that's readily available. I think the previous link was sending you not directly to the project info for tonight. So I'll make sure I get that into the chat box so that you can view it there if you would like. Public comments will be received, are going to be available, or we will be accepting them rather through June 5th, and they'll make their way into the transcript of the meeting that way. There's a couple ways you could submit those. If you aren't able to do so tonight, you can mail them as well as email them to Mr. Dennis Randolph. I'll include his contact information in the chat box as well for everyone. And with that, I'll pass it off. I believe, Scott, I think maybe you do the agenda.
Yeah, sure. Just to give you an overview of what we're going to cover tonight, Dennis Randolph, Public Works Director, is going to give us a project overview. I will walk through the schedule for the overall project and the preliminary design that's laid out so far, and talk about some next steps, and then we will open it up to questions at the end. So this is Dennis. And Dennis, you're muted, by the way.
Yes, I'm muted. Sorry. All right, this is Dennis Randolph, and I am the Public Works Director. I didn't mention it the first time. I assume everybody knows me. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the project and the history of the outer roads. This started back in 1980 when the frontage roads for US 71 were converted to two-way or one-way traffic. And what we found is that it was a great hardship in several important ways. First of all, it just makes travel around town very difficult. You have to go out of your way to get from one side of the expressway to the other. We've repeatedly told the state and the federal government in grant applications about the extra miles that folks have to drive just to go from one side of our city to the other. So that's been important. The other big impact had been economic for our retailers, our businesses in town. Again, that poor traffic flow just drove a lot of folks out of town. And obviously they went to other places. What we're trying to do with this job, and that's the benefits of the two-way traffic, is improve circulation and improve what I would call exposure to traffic to all the business and the properties that are along I-49 on the frontage roads, so that you get around a lot better. Also, what the frontage roads need, it's very important, is a way for pedestrians and bicycle traffic, not motorized vehicles, to move. Right now, you all know there's no frontage or sidewalks along a majority of the road, and unfortunately, people do want to walk along the road, but often they have to walk with their backs to the traffic. It's a very bad situation, and so this project will improve safety in a number of ways, especially for pedestrians. It'll make circulation a lot better around town for our residents and our businesses. For funding, again, I'll step back 1 second. It took us about 3 years, starting in 2009, 2010, to get an agreement with the state highway department and federal highway administration that we could convert the outer roads to two-way traffic. Then the job for the next 5 or 6 years after that was to get funding. They told us that we could do it, but we had to find the funding. So we got a number of grants, surface transportation grants from the Federal Highway Administration. Missouri Department of Transportation has a cost share program where they provided some funds for the work. So altogether, the project is going to cost about $15 million, but we've got about $12 million of funding from federal and state sources to do the project. The other $3 million comes from our transportation sales tax. So money's in place. We're basically in the phase of getting the job going right now. Actually, we've been working on it for the last year or so, doing a number of things. The work we're going to be doing for the project runs from Harry Truman Drive down to Missouri 150 and deals with the frontage roads, converting them, moving some intersections that Scott will talk about in a minute. But again, besides helping that east-west traffic, this also makes long distance north-south traffic and keeps our local traffic up on the road. In other words, you won't have to get on the expressway to have a convenient trip down from Harry S. Truman Drive down to 150. You can do it on a frontage road where we'll probably have speed limits of 35 miles an hour. That'll be continuous travel. And so it'll, again, there are a lot of safety aspects for the project, that separating through traffic, I-49 high-speed commercial through traffic, commuters away from residential local traffic for Grandview is a big safety feature. We're going to use a project delivery method called design build for this project. And what that means is that we will hire a team of design engineers and builders based upon qualifications to do the job for us. We've already gone through several steps of this process, and right now we have 3 firms selected that we're going to offer to submit a proposal to us to do the work. And again, we will select that firm based upon the proposal they offer us, and that proposal will include a factor regarding cost. But again, we have a maximum amount of money we can spend, so that isn't a real big factor. But what we're also looking for them to do is provide us with creative solution to doing this work, be creative and innovative. So we're going to be looking at what they can do for Grandview and its citizens to make this corridor very livable and to help the whole city. So that's kind of a quick outline, and Scott can go ahead here.
Thanks, Dennis. Again, if you just joined, I'm Scott Kogan with WSP. We are helping the city as owners rep, working through some of this preliminary design and procurement documents for the design build project. What you're seeing here is just an overall schedule of the project, where we've been and where we're going. Right now, we're kind of right in the middle. Over to the right, this is a color-coded bar chart here. So what's in blue there is what was done in previous years, primarily by MoDOT. They initiated the early work on this project, which included the environmental clearance, also called a categorical exclusion, which that document has been prepared. Another thing is that's really important to the project is what's called an AJR, or an access justification report. That has to be done anytime an access to or from the interstate is modified. So that has been done, and that really kind of sets the rules that we have to work within as far as moving ramps around on I-49. The other thing that that MoDOT did, and going back to Dennis's slide on the last slide, basically the north half of the project, MoDOT did the preliminary design for that. And so the next stage there, as we move into 2019, is that preliminary design allowed MoDOT to issue an A date, which means that the right-of-way and easement acquisition can begin on that portion of the project. So that is underway right now, and we're shooting to have that done by the end of the year. What we've been doing also since about middle of last year is the city has been with us has been working on the preliminary design for the south half of the project, and at the same time working on what we call the procurement documents, or essentially the contract that will be used with the design build teams moving forward. So we're right towards the end of that effort, and once we have this public meeting and finalize the preliminary design, we can move into the right-of-way and easement acquisition for the south half of the project. Expect that to carry into next year. We will also go into the mode of design builder selection. As Dennis mentioned, there are 3 teams that have been shortlisted, and we'll be going through meetings and with them as they prepare their proposals for the final design of the project. At that point, once the design builder is selected, we move into the design build phase. So this is where one of the key benefits to the design build method helps a project speed up the schedule, because design and construction can now overlap. So the contractor can be out building parts of the project even while design is continuing on other parts of the project. So construction is expected to start early next year and go into 2. So with that, just to give you an idea of what does preliminary design mean, we consider preliminary design about 30% complete. It's basically enough design to establish the right-of-way footprint for the project, to determine where we might need additional right-of-way, where we need temporary easements. It's also a way to identify any major utility conflicts, and we can adjust our design around those types of things, so that we're trying to minimize as many of the utility conflicts as we can with the preliminary design. We'll point out that once the design build teams take over the design of the project, there will be changes to it. Again, another benefit to design build is that an engineer and a contractor are now working together. They may find efficiencies and innovations in the design, ways to improve it, that sort of thing. So expect there to be changes here and there. The other thing that's nice about design build is part of the contract, part of the proposal process, will be asking them to look for certain enhancements that can be done along the project. These include things like landscaping, parkland, lighting, any sort of additional sidewalk, pedestrian type facilities that could be included in the project. Those are all considered enhancements there. So with that, I'm going to shift over to the project preliminary design. Let this load. what you're seeing here is just the overall project. Again, Dennis mentioned that the project starts at Mo 150 on the south end, continues all the way up to Harry Truman Drive on the north end. And the ultimate goal of the project is to switch the frontage roads from one-way to two-way. But in order to do that, we have to do a lot of shifting of ramps around. And then you'll also see the addition of sidewalks in a lot of places. The first thing I'll do here before we dive into specific areas is just give a little orientation of the legend here. So the darker blue / purple color is going to be anywhere we're adding new sidewalk. The reddish color is going to be optional sidewalk. Those are areas where we've determined that it would be fairly difficult to put a sidewalk in because of the terrain in certain areas. And so we're calling those optional. This is one of those areas where a design build team could propose putting it in, and that would be an additional, and we'll consider that an enhancement to the project. Mill and overlay is the green color, so that's where anywhere the existing pavement is in decent shape, it just needs a new surface on it. So they would mill off the top couple inches of surface and then place a new surface, new pavement markings on top of that. Anywhere we have to put in new pavement is going to be the lighter blue color. And then anywhere we have shown removing the existing pavement is going to be this cross-hatched dark red color. The existing property lines are black. The existing right-of-way line where the property lines touch the frontage road areas is going to be an orange color. Anywhere we need to acquire new right-of-way is going to be a red color for proposed right-of-way. Anywhere we have to acquire some temporary easements to do the work is going to be a dashed blue line. And then we do have a couple places that will that we're requiring there to be a privacy screen or fence put up for some areas where the improvements kind of run through some backyards of some properties. So with that, I'll kind of zoom out here and do a little bit of a big picture of the south half of the project. So from Mo 150 up to 140th Street, or even beyond 140th Street, really the access to and from 140th Street is being modified by adding roundabouts to both sides of I-49. So for southbound traffic, they would use the roundabout on the west side, and for northbound traffic, they would use the roundabout on the east side. So that's kind of big picture on the south end. On the north end of the project, the access to Main is also changing. For the most part, the slip ramps are a little further away from the intersection of Main Street, and the new ramps are going to be placed closer to Main Street, with the frontage road traffic now being diverted down some of the side streets, even to some new roads adjacent to I-49. I'll go back and zoom in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the east side and work our way north and just point out a few details, and then I'll turn around and come back down the west side. Right now today at the Mo 150 interchange here at this intersection with White Avenue is currently where the frontage road traffic goes from two-way to one-way. So there's going to need to be some modification to that intersection to allow the two-way traffic north of that intersection. Then we're into that mill and overlay area. We've also got a sidewalk shown here. You'll notice that's the darker red color, which means that this is an area of optional sidewalk. So the sidewalk would not have to be placed along here. It would be beneficial if it was, and we are planning to acquire the temporary easement needed to put that sidewalk in. Going up to the north, you'll see some new pavement out on I-49. That is the what's becoming a new auxiliary lane for traffic that is both getting on the highway and getting off the highway. Getting off the highway, this is the new access to 140th Street. So traffic would exit at that location, come up and go through a roundabout, around the roundabout, and onto the frontage road up to 140th Street. This is one of those areas where we are showing needing privacy screening along these properties. There's quite a bit of area needed to build this roundabout, and these are some people's backyards. So we want to put up some privacy screening along the backside of this roundabout. This also becomes the way that 140th Street traffic now accesses I-49 northbound. So if you're on 140th Street from either direction, you would turn onto the frontage road here on the east side, come down, circle around the roundabout, and get on to I-49 north at that location. At 140th Street, again, all the frontage roads are becoming two-way, so that's going to require redoing some of the pavement marking on 140th Street and all the approaches to 140th Street, and will also require some reworking of the traffic signals at that location. Moving to the north, again, we're in that green area, so that's the mill and overlay section. We will be having to redo some of the driveways through here, mainly because we're adding the sidewalk along there, which pushes the grading out a little ways and requires us to have to replace some of those driveways. That mill and overlay continues all the way up to the north, really all the way up to almost to High Grove Road. At that point, this is where we've separated the I-49 traffic from the frontage roads. So I-49 northbound to Main Street now has a dedicated ramp, a new ramp at that location. The outer road traffic will be on the outer road, and we've got a new curve at that location to create a smoother transition from the existing outer road to High Grove Road, going down to the east. Access to these businesses here will be maintained by a short access road to the north. Frontage road traffic will come down High Grove Road now to a new road that runs north and south at this location. That will require a new traffic signal be put in at that intersection, which will also allow for pedestrian crossings across Main Street north and south. As the road crosses Main Street to the north, we've got, again, another place where we've indicated some privacy screening along these properties where they've got a new road in their backyard, essentially. That new road then curves over and ties into existing Booth Lane there to the north, which means that the Booth Lane to the south will be turned into a cul-de-sac at that location. Then continuing down 129th Street, this is all back to the mill and overlay section until we get over to the transition to the frontage road. Again, at this point, realigning to create a smoother transition between 129th and the frontage road. So need to do a little bit of pavement replacement in that area. And then from that point all the way up to Harris Truman Drive, it's again a mill and overlay, a restriping, but adding new sidewalk along that area as well. At Harry S. Truman Drive, continuing to the north of there, that is currently one way and will remain one way. That is not included in this project as far as changing to the two-way operation. So this would be the intersection that goes from one-way to two-way on both sides. So I'll hop over to the west side. You will notice in this area we don't have sidewalk shown. There is an existing sidewalk out there that is in good shape, so that can stay and will stay along there all the way up to Main Street. We are here in this location. The ramp gets shifted. The existing ramp is further to the north, and that'll get shifted down closer to the Main Street intersection. With the two-way operation, this U-turn bridge becomes obsolete and will be removed with the project. And then the outer road will now get redirected down to Good Avenue here, over to 15th Street, where a little bit of extra pavement is needed on the approaches to 15th Street to cross the Main to add additional lanes. Gets transitioned back to Mill and Overlay as it ties back in with High Grove Road. High Grove Road comes over, and again, we need a little bit of new pavement to make that turn to connect into the existing frontage road. We're back to Mill and Overlay at that point. You will notice from Main to southbound I-49, there's a new ramp at that location, which also includes a new auxiliary lane. So this is a full lane from Main all the way down to the new roundabout here on the west side. So yeah, southbound traffic trying to go to or from 140th Street will now use the roundabout here on the west side. The added benefit to this location is that we've now added access over to 15th Street here to the west, which creates some economic development opportunities in that area. Traffic will again use this roundabout for any southbound traffic to or from 140th Street. Pretty much the same continues down to 140th Street and beyond with Mill and Overlay, adding sidewalks to the outside, restriping for the two-way traffic. That continues all the way down until it ties back into the 050 intersection here. There will be a need, again, this is the area where traffic on the frontage road goes from two-way to one-way. So there's going to be a reconfiguration of the intersection at that location, restriping that to make the north and west legs the through movement, and the south leg will tee into that at that location. So that's an overview of the preliminary design. With that, I'll hop back over to the presentation here. Some windows out of the way. Okay, so next steps, we've covered some of these already, but public comments after this point will be accepted through June 5th. We will talk about the right-of-way acquisition process. That will start shortly for the south half of the project. As I said, it's already underway for the north half of the project. Design build team selection is expected in the fall of this year, with construction beginning early 2021 and ending in the summer of 2022. With that, I'm going to let Tim Orrick, who is the city's attorney, acting as the acquisition agent for the property acquisition on the property, talk a little bit about the process there.
Well, great. Thank you, Scott. Again, I'd like to say good evening to everyone, and appreciate you taking the time to tune in and learn a little bit more about this project. As Scott indicated, my assignment or area of responsibility for the project is to act as the city's right-of-way agent to acquire new easements and other property rights that might be necessary for a project like this. Any type of project, whether it's a road project or any other sort of development, needs a footprint of land to sit on. And so obviously there is an existing right-of-way footprint that is out there and currently improved with roads. But when a new project is designed, sometimes it's necessary to secure a bigger footprint of land for the project. In addition to securing a bigger footprint for the project, sometimes it's also necessary to acquire temporary easements that are needed for workspace by the construction team during the actual execution of the project. So there's two basic sorts of easements. One are permanent right-of-way and other similar easements, and then there are temporary construction easements. Particularly when federal funds are partially attached to a project, there are a set of federal laws and regulations that govern the right-of-way acquisition process. And it's our job to make sure that the city's right-of-way activity in acquisition concurs with these federal laws and regulations. Generally, what those laws and regulations require is that in order to present a formal offer to purchase right-of-way or temporary construction easement, that we first have just compensation, the amount of money the city owes for the easement, determined by a third-party independent real estate appraiser. So we've retained an appraiser, and they will prepare an estimate of just compensation in the form of a written report. If the just compensation estimate exceeds $10,000, then a second appraiser would review that initial report to make sure it followed established guidelines and procedures. After the appraisers have done their work, then on behalf of the city, my office will present a formal written purchase offer to all of the property owners that are being directly affected by the project. Again, we're absolutely obligated to pay for just compensation for the easements that are required. And leading up to that offer, again, we'll follow those processes. After the offer is made, we're also required to engage in good faith negotiations with the owner so that the owner is guaranteed an opportunity to present any information they feel should be considered or may have been overlooked, may not be properly considered. And so there is some give and take there in the hopes of reaching a negotiated settlement for the property rights that might be required. Obviously, the city cannot force a property owner to accept the offer, and occasionally we will just have a good faith difference of opinion with the property owner regarding just compensation. If we're unable to reach a negotiated settlement, then the easements are acquired through the condemnation or eminent domain process. Although that's a process that the city hopes to avoid, it is there as a way for property owners to have their day in court, if you will, in an informal manner, to have their concerns heard. So again, if that's kind of a high level overview of this, if you happen to be a property owner who will be directly affected by the acquisition of an easement, either a permanent easement or, again, a temporary work area easement. You'll get several communications from my office, and again, we'll work through you and work through more detail as we carry out those responsibilities. So hopefully that's a high-level view, and if there are questions, again, please submit them and we'll try to get them answered. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And that does bring us to the question portion of the presentation. So I've seen maybe a couple show up. Lisa, if you will handle reading those off, we will get those answered.
Okay, first question received is the only entrance and exit to Taco Bell and Walgreens going from Main Street? And if so, is Main Street going to be redone for left turns to handle the traffic?
So the entrances to Taco Bell, the entrance here on the east side of Taco Bell is getting removed. And we're currently in negotiations with them to add an entrance from the frontage road on the north side. Their access point along Main Street will remain. So the question about Walgreens, Lisa, I guess I don't see this question on my end. Can you reread that part about?
Oh, yep, and it's in the Q&A box if that's helpful, if you want to see it. But I believe is the only entrance and exit to Taco Bell and Walgreens going to be Main Street, I believe, maybe. That's what was intended there.
Yeah. And the answer is no. Again, there'll be another entrance to Taco Bell. We're working on good there. And for Walgreens, there'll be the Main Street entrance. And then you see, Scott, you can point out there's a new configuration. So you can go down High Grove and turn on the frontage road, the two-way frontage road, and get back to Walgreens. Why is that like that? Again, we're having to work this transition with the Federal Highway Administration and the Missouri Department of Transportation. Their interest is they're on and off ramps, and they believe strongly in not having driveways on their ramp areas. And we're having to figure out how to service our businesses, considering that desire by those agencies not to have access. So this is what you see. I think I wanted to mention one of the problems Grandview has had is this. Back in 1980, when they first imposed these one-way service roads, and since then, as they've turned US 71 into Interstate 49, is that it was the Highway Department and the Federal Highway Administration imposing an expressway on a city. And the expressway was built to serve the expressway and not our residents or our businesses. And what we're trying to do with this project is put the city first. But in doing that, we have to respect what the Federal Highway Administration and the Missouri Department of Transportation feel is important for the safety of their expressway. But our interest is in making access to our businesses and residents, making travel around the city on the local roads, on our streets, safer and smoother. But again, what it means is that we have to do some adjustments with driveways. We're doing our best to make sure that those changes aren't disruptive. And we continue even right now to work and do modeling and negotiate with the Highway Department and FHWA on ways to least negatively impact our businesses and our residences. So we're looking at a complete change about how an expressway interfaces with the city. And again, once we do some preliminaries, the design builders are going to be able to come in and also work things out to help enhance what we've set up, the framework, and hopefully make it even better. It's an ongoing process.
Okay, next question. What percentage of the past and future capital improvement taxes are being used for this project?
We're going to be using about, like I said, the project is running about $15 million. We were able to obtain 12 million or 80%, and that's the standard match that is used across the country for federal aid. So we've got a full match. It takes about $3 million out of the of transportation sales tax revenue that we'll be using for this. We get about $1 million a year, a little more than that. So spread over some time, it'll be about 3 million. We have been slowly building that amount in reserves up so that we have some funds to work with and do this work.
And similar on that question, this actually came prior to the one I just read. What percentage of the half-cent transportation sales is being funneled into this? Past taxes collected and future taxes?
Again, we get something in excess of about $1 million a year from the sales tax, and altogether we'll be using about 3 million for this project. Again, spread over several years, and we have some funds already available. I don't know the exact number, but we do spread it over every year so that we can do other work. We do slurry seal work every year. Pretty much we're doing resurfacing every other year. And we're matching other federal projects too with the sales tax. We're going to be building a new overpass over Blue Ridge Boulevard that will use some transportation sales tax. But what we've tried our best to do is leverage up the transportation sales tax money with federal aid whenever we can. And over the past 10 years, we've brought in over $32 million of federal aid grant, and it all hasn't been spent yet. This is for these projects, this project, Blue Ridge, and a number of other federal aid projects that we've got, but also been able to do slurry sealing and resurfacing as we've needed to do it.
Next question is, what is the final date of completion?
We are planning, as Scott mentioned, in 2022, but the final absolute time, whether it's September or October or whatever, we do leave that open so the design builders can tell us what their schedule is. So right now we're suggesting that sometime in 2022, but by giving them flexibility in terms of the final absolute date, they're able to schedule it with other work they have and be more efficient. Again, that allows them to give us more product in the end. And we think it's a good strategy when we're dealing with design build teams to get as much as we can out of that $15 million investment. So our objective is we have so much money, we want to get as much out of it as possible. And one of the ways we can do that, again, is by leaving some flexibility for that ending date. But what's important is that as we do work along any particular area, say in front of a particular business or resident, we're putting restrictions on the design build team about how long they can keep a driveway disrupted, under construction, or closed. That's very important. We have, and Tim Orrick came up with some great ideas regarding those limitations. Again, they have to be friendly to the design builders so that they'll give us more for our money. But also we are working to make sure that disruption is kept to an absolute minimum. When you do a big project like this, there's got to be, it'd be nice to be able to set it down one night and wake up the next morning and be done, but that's not the way building roads is. So we are putting limitations or directions to the design builders on how long they can close driveways or rebuild them or do things like that, which we think, again, I think they're superior sections compared to what I've seen over the past years. I think they'll work very well to minimize disruption.
Okay, next question is a comment question. First part is, Good Avenue and High Grove will not be able to handle that traffic load. It's a big mistake. And how do I get on northbound 49 from Main Street going east?
Well, to cover the first point of that, that the side roads wouldn't be able to handle the traffic. This was actually mentioned earlier tonight in our first presentation, but the traffic flow is changing because we're taking the ramp traffic and separating it from the frontage road traffic. So most of the traffic that's just trying to get off and on to Main Street will not be forced down the High Grove Road and to 129th Street. So that's all going to become local traffic at that point. There was a model done, traffic model done with the overall project early on that incorporated the traffic projections for the future. And it did show that the existing lanes and configurations along here are adequate to handle that future traffic. Second part of that question was, how do I get northbound I-49 from Main Street going east? So if you're on Main Street going east, this is an area is purposely not shown on this exhibit because this ramp here is an area that the city is currently working with MoDOT and FHWA on some options there. The original access justification report showed the ramp similar to the other three, where it was separated from the frontage road and came directly onto I-49. The next iteration of the design was to leave the ramp alone, but cut off access to the frontage road here at the end. Our current exhibit is maintaining the northbound access over to the frontage road at that location, and we're looking at yet another option at this location, which we're doing some additional modeling in this area to see what could work. But yes, from Main Street to northbound, it's going to be some combination, but it's going to all occur basically at this same intersection where it goes today.
Yeah, I think that's the short answer. Going onto the expressway, either north or south from Main Street, you're going to turn into the same roadway opening and continue like you have for many years. Okay, that won't change. What we're trying to do is move the local traffic, the traffic, the slow moving traffic. We're moving that away from that interchange. And if you look at the crash numbers, and I recently looked at them again, the problem with safety on Main Street and at the I-49 ramps is at those two signalized intersections with people turning to get onto the expressway. And so we're going to be able to, again, keep local traffic for you going around the city, going to school, things like that, going up to Truman Marketplace, and we're going to separate it from that traffic that's a little more problematic regarding safety. Again, we hope to make everything safer. That's a real objective of the job. But again, if you want to go on the expressway, it'll look the same to you. Actually, getting off will look a lot the same too. You'll come up off the expressway up to Main Street and then turn like you always have. Can't hear you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We have one question left in the queue. So if you have a follow-up question or you want to submit another one, please do. The last question we have currently is regarding the current northbound outer road. How wide will the road base be extended? And please verify that there will be a sidewalk. it's a few parts here. I'll read it all and then maybe I can recap. And then what will happen to the water drainage ditch on the east side of the outer road?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can handle that. I see all those in
Great.
the queue. As far as the width of the road, anywhere you see green on this exhibit is going to be just a mill and overlay of the existing width. The existing width that's out there is adequate to handle the traffic shifting from a one-way to a two-way situation. So it will not be any wider than it is today. The next part of the question is verify there will be a sidewalk. This is an area where there were several places along the east side that putting a sidewalk in would be very difficult. One of those areas was just north of 140th Street. There's a small section through here where it drops off very steeply. There's a large culvert out there that would need to be extended in order to put a sidewalk in that stretch. This is an area, this is a property that is probably going to develop in the future, and I'm sure a sidewalk would be investigated at that time, if not included in this project. The other area along the east side is pretty much the area from White Avenue down here all the way up to where the roundabout, where the blue starts here and goes into the roundabout. So along this stretch here, again, another area that would be very difficult to get a sidewalk to work in that area without some major regrading. So those are the two optional areas. Everywhere else at this point are being shown as adding sidewalk along the and what will happen to the water drainage ditch on the east side of the outer road. There is several different situations going on with the drainage ditch. In some cases, the existing ditch is up close to the road. In other cases, the ditch, for example, at the Lutheran church, there's a really big, windy, deep ditch that goes down through there. These are areas, again, where we hope to see improvements from the design build teams. We are planning to acquire the temporary construction easements needed to clean up those areas. They may or may not be required to be updated with the project, just depending on their location and the extent of the improvements needed at those areas.
You might want to talk about the area by the Holiday Inn, Scott. I think people might be interested in that.
Holiday Inn up to the north, right?
Yes.
Up here.
North of 129th, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Remind me, this one here, right?
yeah,
Dennis?
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a ditch in there that we're showing a sidewalk essentially sitting on top of the ditch. So at that location, you're likely to see some buried drainage through there to carry that water along that property.
Yeah, as much as possible, working as far as the city is concerned, and also what we hope the design builders will show us is cleaning up some spots that don't look very good, that don't work very well. And again, our part of our objective, both for our folks who just want to walk up and down the street, or for people who want to come in and build commercial businesses or retail, is to make Grandview look good. And so we'll be putting in curbs and where we can, putting in drainage. For example, he mentioned the church further down, back down the street, and that meandering drain doesn't work very good. It's always weedy. It may not be straight. We're going to leave that for the design builders to be creative there are a lot of new stormwater techniques that can be used to potentially rain gardens or just making a proper meandering stream. It looks good, is natural, is sustainable and resilient. So that's the beauty of design build. We have practical people who build things for their livelihood, working with some good engineers who are creative, and they can get together, and when they work together like that, really come up with some nifty ideas and solutions. So that's why we want to do it this way. It doesn't give you all the answers you may want to grab onto at this point, but in the end, it isn't creativity for creativity's sake, but to make a better job. And for us, that's for the Grandview residents and our businesses, so that we have a job that suits them rather than a job that suits an expressway.
Okay, we got one more question. When is the Blue Ridge Boulevard Bridge replacement scheduled for?
Sure. Good question, because that's another project we're working right now. And I'll just give you a 2-second history. This project is $12 million. The Blue Ridge Bridge will be about $7.1 million. 75% of the money for that bridge we've gotten from the federal government, Federal Railroad Administration, and from the Kansas City Southern Railroad, which is great. We're going to be paying 25% of the cost. We are in final design stage right now. We're making adjustments required by the Kansas City Southern Railroad. And we tentatively have a bid planned for early next year. It depends on again, COVID is affecting all our projects right at this point. I'm hoping right now that we'll have that bid sometime between late January and say June, with a start later in the summer. So that'd be the summer of next year. It takes about 2 years to build a railroad bridge. And so we would finish that bridge hopefully in 2023. We'll have about altogether between that and I-49 frontage road jobs, about $20 million of projects going out. One of the biggest programs the city's had. But anyway, that's where we see the project right now.
Okay, that is all of the comments and questions we have received thus far.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just, I certainly want to thank everybody for coming. I think we've had a great attendance, and so we do appreciate you coming. Everything's been recorded. We're going to get the recordings out so you can see them. I think I'm even going to try to port them up to YouTube so the whole world can see them. I want to thank the WSP folks, Lisa and Scott, for helping us, Tim for helping us with the right-of-way. We've got a really good first-class team to do this job, so I think you're going to see a result that places Grandview first. And there's going to be disruptions, and to tell you the truth, it's going to be different in the end, all right? But different doesn't mean wrong, it just means different. And but it's a road that'll be built for people. Frontage road isn't to go 65 miles an hour on, you go 65 on I-49. But this will be a livable road that'll be very safe, and I think will serve the city for a long time. Make it attractive for new retailers and businesses come in, for new people to want to live in Grandview. So I think that's what our objective is with this project, to really make Grandview a nicer place than it already is to live in, and to help everybody in our community. So I see it's getting about close to the end time. Again, if you have questions, comments are open till next week, and we will certainly try to get answers back to you, and you can see both sessions again again, we'll be posting all that. You can go back. I'm sorry, I blabber on, Lisa. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I think that's a perfect ending. I don't know if we left anything out or anyone else wants to add anything on before we go, but I will echo. I'm quite pleased at everyone who joined and stayed through for the full time. Really appreciate that.
Yes. So are we gonna just say goodnight and go from there? It's 6:35, so we actually filled our time without having any blank spaces. I'm pleased.
Yep.
Last call. I'm ready to go home. Okay.
Yep. No additional notes, just a thank you. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Have a good night. I'm going to sign off.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.